Yeah.
They make it instead of saying
They talk about why not to say at the end on Shabbos and Yom Tov? So yes, the explanation of why, because he takes you to somewhere, you know, to a different location there. But the answer is, I think I have it also here. It says this is this is hay, right? Okay. Well, the end of the day, the reason that for Baruch Hu towards the end is for people that miss. And the idea is that on Shabbos and Yom Tov, people they would never miss Baruch Hu. They're going to be in shul on time to make it for Baruch Hu on Shabbos. Davening starts later. They would never assume that people should come this late. That's the thought process behind it. Obviously, that's the case. There are people who come again, I don't know. But the Sfaradim, you still do Baruch Hu at the end of on Shabbat and Shacharit. That's not just our minyan. That's like in the right in the Edotam Yisrach. So the Ashkenazim is, as the Aruch HaShulchan writes. He says, the whole thing that the Shulchan Aruch writes that on Shabbos and Yom Tov you don't say Baruch Hu after the last Kaddish. He says Etzleinu gam b'chol leka minhag zeh. This is not the prevalent Ashkenazi minhag. If you daven in Breuers no, I daven I lived in the Heights on Benton Avenue, so I davened sometimes in Breuers, but during weeknights, particularly for Mariv. But it was also it was called Dumbra. It was like this little minion in the basement, whatever. It was conveniently timed, and that was for me the most important, was finding the right time minion. And they daven, Nusach Ashkenaz. Sorry, not they daven Nusach Sfard. They're Ashkenazi, but daven Nusach Sfard. And they did Baruch Hu, towards the end, before Aleinu at the end. So it was it's something that was sort of probably became part of minhag. Again, in our shul, and I believe standard nusach Ashkenaz is you don't have Baruch Hu at the end. You do have people who will say Baruch Hu at the end because they missed Baruch Hu, and then sometimes you'll hear people say they'll sort of say Baruch Hu at the end because they want to chapa Baruch Hu, but it's not part of the matbeya that you see printed in a siddur. Yes. Sure. Yes.
You have 7 of you.
Oh, that was the other piece, right? Thank you for reminding me. That also you can catch a Baruch Hu at Kriyas HaTorah. So particularly, you have to be coming after after the Maftir Aliyah in order to really miss any Baruch Hu opportunity. And so that's perhaps also the reason why Shabbos and Yom Tov, that wasn't the custom. Yeah.
Spartan Edot Mizrach is a matter of uniformity.
Right, they do it every single day. Yeah,
and
correct.
So far as Ashkenaz custom,
Yeah,
it's a hybrid between custom and utility.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Simeon, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yes, Rav, I've been in Minyanim where the latecomer himself knocks off a Kaddish, and he is in essence the Shliach Tzibur. He says the Baruch Hu, and the congregation responds, and it's not the original Shliach Tzibur that does this.
Yeah, I think many of us have been in such a minyan where someone who came late, sneaks the Baruch Hu in at the end, which relates to a siman in Chelek Aleph of Mishnah Berurah. There is what to say about the people who miss Baruch Hu. How do you make it up? But that's a different topic that we'll get back around when we finish the whole cycle of Mishnah Berurah. Then we'll come back to it in about 15 years.
And they did have a draft. The Avelim do it.
Is that true? If it's such available, that's how they do it at the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
The school there.
I mean, I think that's in the white book.
There you go.
The Chazar.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's start Reish Pei Zayin, which may feel like a little bit irrelevant, but it's not actually. Um, it won't change anything that we typically do, but it's good to understand what we do. Reish Pei Zayin, Nichum Avelim Uvikur Cholim B'Shabbos Uvosif Echad. So, the topic is comforting mourners and visiting the sick on Shabbos. One sif only. Here we go. You are able to comfort mourners on Shabbos. And you're also able to visit the sick. Now, when you go there, maybe we have to change things, do something different. Let's see what we have to do differently. Oh, okay. Good. What's the Havamina?
Shabbos.
Okay, so one is that as an Avelus on Shabbos is you're not supposed to have Avelus before Hesya. So you might think that acknowledging it, out loud for the Avel is an acknowledgement of mourning on Shabbos. Okay, good. Why can't I visit the sick on Shabbos? What would the Havamina be? That I have to be told, what's the Havamina that I wouldn't be able to visit the sick, that you need to be telling me that I can visit the sick? So here, this relates to a topic that does hit near dear to a lot of our hearts, which is that in the Misha Berach for Cholim.
Shabbos Yimiluzah.
Right, very good. Let's the next line here. Shabbos Yimiluzah. Because we're not allowed to cry out on Shabbos, not literally cry out, to cry, although we'll talk about the physical crying in a moment, that one should, there's a question, can you actually, create a situation where a person may cry? Leave that aside for a moment, but to cry out, meaning to beseech God, to make requests of God on Shabbos, is not something that we do unless you absolutely need it on Shabbos. So if somebody broke their leg and they haven't been able to come to shul in a few weeks, they could use some socialization. We know people who have this situation where they're not terminally ill. They're not, but they had a surgery and they're not. So could there some friends come over? Like you telling me there was a havmina that they couldn't go over. Well, the fear was that there would be someone who would daven for them, and and they would say, they would have a misha berach for them. And now you think, well, why can't I daven for him? He's good. Hinna's giving me the look. We do that. Now, so this is going to be that point is going to be the point of probably the most contention of our shir today, in which the Aruch HaShulchan actually addresses directly. We'll get there, which is he actually is very uncomfortable with the Misha Berach for Cholim being said on Shabbos for people who, ledugma, they broke their leg. Their life is not in danger. They might be in pain and discomfort, and their family is in discomfort because they have to help. Everyone has to help out. But to daven for someone who is not in a state of sakana, of real danger, I'll read the line a little later. He wonders how this became a thing. Okay, so let's read the next sentence here of the Mishnah of the Shulchan Aruch. Because he already acknowledges here that if you're going to engage in these activities of Bikur Cholim and Nichum Avelim, you have to do it in a different way. He says, "V'lo yomar lo kederech she'omer lo b'chol." You shouldn't say to them as you say to them on the weekdays. Ela omer lo Shabbos himalizoku refuah krova lavo v'rachama v'rubim v'shivtu v'shalom. When you speak to them and you daven for them, you should say Shabbos himalizuk. That Shabbos, was a time where we don't cry out, and the refuah should come. Krova lavo, it will come soon. Notice by the words I translated very carefully. Also, the refuah krova lavo will come soon. Is that a request of God? It's not a request. It's a description. Exactly. It's a description. The refuah will come soon. I didn't ask God for anything. I'm just saying the refuah is going to come soon. So notice here the line. You're not saying a whole Misha Berach. I'm saying about Yaakov. And then Shabbos Imalizok or Refuah Krovo Lavo. It's just you go over them. How you doing? We've been thinking about you, etc. You visit with them, and as you depart, you say Shabbos Imalizok. Look, on Shabbos we can't cry out, meaning to beseech God. Refuah krova lavo, you should know that the refuah is, it's coming. The Varachamav merubim, and the mercy is great. Did I ask for mercy? I didn't say I'm asking for mercy. I'm describing that the mercy will be abundant. The shiftu v'shalom, and the rest will be in peace, and you'll be able to really be in a better state. No one's asking God for anything in this line. That's the descriptor of what will be soon, and what describing God's abundant mercy, etc. V'yesh omrim, says the Rama, de'ein tzarich lomar v'rachama v'ruk merubim v'chulei. That there are those that say, the Rambam says, we don't say that the mercy is great, etc., etc. And this is the custom, this is the minhag. We don't say it. That's why you're familiar in the Mishaberach and Cholim. We don't say v'rachama merubim v'shivtu v'shalom v'nomar. No. We say Shabbos milizok or refuah krova lavo. So the Ashkenazim, we cut off the minhag. We don't say the last part. I don't know. By the way, Shlomo, you tell me, or maybe David from you here in the summer at the shore. Do Sfaradim have the whole longer piece here? Shabbat milizok or refuah krova lavo v'rachamav merubim v'shivtu v'shalom. No, I don't think so either. I never heard that when I've been a few times to Sfaradim and Yanim.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
We're going to talk about that. Yes, the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell what you say to Ravel. Yes, quickly.
Something is doing this in cause death. So even if you have a leg problem, it could be something within the leg that shoots up into the heart.
100%. Look, if there's a yeah.
Where do with the line?
Sakanas nefashos, meaning a danger to life, or even suffix sakana. There's a right. So for example, by the way, to have daven for when there were hostages, from the first minute that there were hostages, that we should be davening and turning ourselves upside down. And we said Avinu Malkeinu. Do you ever remember that? We said Avinu Malkeinu on Shabbos, which we never do even on Yom Kippur, right? But whatever is needed, when people's lives are in danger, whether it's for health or like such a situation that happened when the beginning of the war, to daven, mishaberach l'chayalei tzahal, particularly when there's active war. For sure, not sorry. Like I'm just reporting. It feels like every day recently, the last week or two, it's like every day you open the news and it's like another chayal. By the way, there's a chayal who grew up here in White Plains, Aryeh Levinson. I taught his sister, Shira, and I hear that he got injured. Baruch Hashem, I think he's in the hospital and he's stable, from what I understood, but serious condition. It's like we should say that Mishaberach l'chayalei tzahal. It's not that we shouldn't. The interesting and it's not the way we shouldn't say the Mishaberach for cholim, but the question is which cholim are we reciting it for? That's the question. But to your point, with anyone who is in a state of a danger or suffix danger, for sure we're davening for them every day, and including Shabbos. So this is what the Mishnah, the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah say. To Richie's question, which is, what would you say to someone who's what's the different language you say to them? So let's take a look down below in the Mishnah Berurah. Sif Katan Aleph, Yicholim. The word Yicholim, which means able to, is an interesting word. You can say that you can be Menachem Aval. You can't do Bikur Cholim. Why is it they can? Amrina Bagamara. Bekoshi Hitiru Lenachem Avelim Ulevaker Cholim b'Shabbos. Rabbis weren't happy when they allowed this. They would Bekoshi. Okay, we'll allow it because we're nice people, but we're not crazy about the idea. Yeah, Lord.
Like Nishlam and Bikur, formal words. In other words, you drop by someone's house and you don't put a label on.
Yeah.
Your neighbor lost. There's a novel. Come by Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Your neighbor is injured. You come by Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
It's the rabbis saying l'chachila you shouldn't even visit? Or the rabbi is saying, don't put a sticker on it that says.
I think it may be both. Look what he said. Look at the last line of the Mishnah Berurah, then I'll address the question fully. He says, "Ve'al kain lo yafe osi osam shekol yemei hashavua ein holchin rak b'Shabbos." The whole week, this person is waiting for a visit. Nobody comes, but Shabbos. Now the counter argument is, I was working all week, so what? I didn't have time.
But step back. On the other hand,
Yeah.
person showing up daily, minion, next door neighbor, drive by Saturday. It's not a question of I didn't do it during the course of the week.
Right. So then the biggest difference is, and by the way, this relates to Bikur Cholim during the week. Person who's Mavakir Cholim during the week, really, and there's a siman about Bikur Cholim, right before Hilchot Shabbat, actually, interestingly, in Yoredea. And there it says, if you're going to visit somebody, you need to daven for them when you're there. You need to say Misha Berach for them. If they're sick, so you should go be there with them, talk to them, whatever you need to do to make them
feel better.
It's good, but there's you should be, he says you should daven to a Kodesh Baruch Hu in their presence. That that say Misha Berach. Yeah. So,
Tefillah has to pray much more than an individual, and we have a big Tefillah on Shabbos.
yeah.
So isn't there a certain power to that prayer for a Tola?
100%. Again, I'm not saying we shouldn't say the Misha Berach for Cholim. The question is upon which Cholim are we reciting it? That's our Hilchot Shabbat is going to talk about that. Not that we shouldn't say the Misha Berach for Cholim. We should not say it. The question is who is being included.
Monday, Thursday, maybe small Tefillah.
Right.
Shabbos they have a big Tefillah.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, I get it. There's a koach in numbers in Tefillah. But
We still say with a caveat, we still say Shabbos.
and we still say the Misha Berach for Shabbos.
There is some counter.
There's a parentheses on Shabbos. Add Shabbos even leaves a kurva. But the funny part of that situation is, and that's what the Aruch HaShulchan's point is. I'm sort of giving it away. He's saying he said the whole Misha Berach beforehand. Nobody said you should daven, for someone who's with a sakana. But it's kind of funny. You beseech God. There's Shabbos Melizot. We're not asking for anything except you just ask. Yishlach lo meher refuah yishlach lo meher refuah shleim min hashamayim l'chol ever chol yom v'zach shech lo yisrael refuah nefesh refuah l'guf. Yeah.
ask for, you're not supposed to ask for things.
You're not supposed to ask for tzrachav on Shabbos. You're not supposed to ask for person's not supposed to ask for his needs on Shabbos.
The personal thing you say.
No, not at all.
Or the presence of a.
And that's why, to Lloyd's point, in terms of the formality of the Nichul Mavelim and Bikur Cholim, right? Nichul Mavelim is or if you're Sfaradi, Tenu Chamur Min HaShamayim Tenu Chamur, right? Did I get that right? Good, right? You say the formal line, right? That is the comfort, right? That's the religious. That's the liturgical way to do this mitzvah. Same thing with Bikur Cholim. Misha Berach Avosei Avim Yitzchak v'Yaakov U'Yivarech Evrapes Lachola. Fill in the name. Right. That is the liturgical way to do the Bikur Cholim. Of course, we know that going for Bikur Cholim, if you showed up to somebody's hospital bed, you knock on the door. Mrs. Whatever the name is. So Mrs. So and so. We're so sorry you're not feeling well. Misha Berach Avosei Avim Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'Nomar Amen. See you next time. This is a Bikur Cholim, right? What kind of a visit is this? You came and you just said my name in the field. Of course, that's not how you do Bikur Cholim, and but part of Bikur Cholim, and part of that mitzvah is to daven to Hashem in front of the person. Now, by the way, you have to be very cautious and careful. If that is something that would upset them because I'm that sick that you're davening for me, like the way that the rabbi davens for somebody when they're really not well. Am I that not well? Then you shouldn't say it in front of them where they're hearing it. But sometimes, I've done this. I'll just step outside the room, when I'm on my way out, and I'll say Misha Berach quietly to myself. If I feel like this may be upsetting to them that I say Misha Berach in front of them, sometimes, by the way, again, I don't have, just being in my position, I don't get this, I don't have these opportunities quite as frequently. I'm sure, by the way, if you ask Ryan Morgenstern, who probably does this all the time, the few times I've done it, sometimes people will ask me, can you say Misha Berach? Can you daven? And I'll say, for sure. And I'll say it out loud in front of they can say amen to the bracha, to the tefillah themselves. But sometimes, you have to judge a situation that people are not always wanting to hear the Misha Berach because they're like, I'm a sick person. So but you should still daven for them, even if they're not, hearing it. So if you're doing it quietly to yourself. Yeah, Jeffrey.
The one is, I used to think that Avelos and Shabbos, it was more about that the person is not supposed to be in Avelos. It's meaning they're supposed to leave Avelos for those 25 hours. Shabbos. So I would have thought this is more, when the person left, they're now in the Shabbos domain. Don't bring them back to where they are not. But it seems from all the explanations that is not what was meant. No,
that doesn't seem to be the concern. By the way, and I would also just add to your, just in response, Avelus doesn't stop on Shabbos. The only one that stops on Avelus b'farhesia, the public aspect of it. The private aspect of Avelus absolutely continue on Shabbos. Yeah.
And my second question is, so when you visit a sick, right? So we're talking about the bakasha to Hashem to help them get better. There's another aspect, which is just making the person feel better, right?
Yeah.
Like not necessarily about, just
being there.
That like somebody cares.
We're there for you. Yeah. You could do that on Shabbos, for sure.
Right. But that seems to be something incredibly different from what they are referring to here, right? The point here is meaning it seems
it's purely sort of liturgical.
It's about a liturgical.
Yeah. You can't say hamakom, or you shouldn't say hamakom yenachem. Yenachem is Kadosh Baruch Hu should comfort you, right? Hashem will comfort. Although maybe that's descriptive again. No, I'm just thinking it is descriptive. Hamakom yenachem eschem. The Kadosh Baruch Hu will, as opposed to yishlach lo. Yeah. By the way, that will fit actually what I just said will fit in a moment, because there is an opinion that says you can just go ahead and say Hamakom Yenachem on Shabbos too. That's not the standard approach that we take, I believe, today, but yeah. Yeah, Lloyd.
In a certain sense, can this be related to the Ashkenazi of reciting Yishkar, actually?
On Shabbos when it falls out.
On the Regalim.
On Yom Tov, and also Yom Tov Shabbos, like we had Shavuos now, yeah.
There was popular demand as opposed to, but strictly abiding by the rules.
There is what to say about that. Yes. And this is where it becomes a fuzzy definition. Right? What does a need on Shabbos? What am I davening for my needs? So yes. Yes, so the Yizkor is something that's said on Yom Tov and on Shabbos, and part of that has to do with really Yizkor's origin story is Yom Kippur.
Right.
But,
Crusades throws a curveball.
Yes, and my Rebbe once said to us as a shir that the Misha Berach B'cholim is the third rail of being a gabbai. If you don't get it right, you really can hurt people. And so because we daven for you, they're not well, and you're not going to say Misha Berach, and people get very upset. And I get understand why. Yes, see.
Send a letter for whatever I have to say, or what my mind, which I don't do. Added to it and say, I always say, do this at a certain time. I can say it's after Shabbos, for example. Yesterday, me, Shabbos, and over at 9:36 or something like that, or 9:45, I would say this should go in at that time.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at. Oh, Simeon, yes, go ahead.
Where does that Hamakom Yenachem Eschem? Where does that quote come from?
That's the origin of it.
Yeah.
I believe it used to be. I'm trying to think. Is it from the Talmud, from the Gemara, or there's some other version of it from the Gemara? I don't know offhand.
Because Rav, I was taught that if you visit an Avel, and let's say it's a single person, you don't modify the plural into the singular. If
Yeah.
it's a female, you don't modify the gender aspect of the phrase otach instead of eschem.
Right.
And I just wondered if we have a source for that.
To right, in terms of the phrase, that's why we wouldn't switch it. I think people don't switch it. They've heard explanations. Hashem is sitting with you. You're not by yourself. We're going to see in a moment that literally in a moment.
Okay.
Not everybody agrees with that the lack of conjugation. Part of me thinks that the reason we don't change it, is because it's easier for people. Just being honest. Take a look at the
It's nice when you're davening, Rob, to know what you're saying. It's a nice thing.
Yes, exactly. Like what we say during the weekdays. You shouldn't say to them what you say during the week. That's not just about that line about Shabbos Himalizuk. It's about what you're talking about too. You shouldn't try to say things that will lead them to a place of the mitzvah that's painful. That's really the word here. The mitzvah or it awakens crying. Which would be also on Shabbos, not to cry. So that's an interesting topic. We're going to talk about that too, by the way. So also to cry on Shabbos, not. If you think it doesn't come up, it's in Sif Beis with the next siman, whether it's permissible or not to cry. So we'll get there. But you shouldn't cause pain to them. So that's also a fine line, because we know that sometimes being in the pain is actually not bad for you, and helps you work through it. But you shouldn't.
I know what's going to cause somebody pain.
And also, you don't know exactly what button you push or what you're going to say that's going to cause that. But you should try your best to be there for the person. And just like the laws of Avelus are in general, you're supposed to follow the lead of the Avel. When you go for a Shiva visit, really, you're supposed to listen to them, kind of follow their lead. You say things that are following up to really what they say. You're not supposed to come in and say, "So what caused the heart attack?" You're not supposed to, come in there and go through. And did you take them to the doctor, or did you not take them to the doctor? People don't want the probing questions of. You're there to hear what they need, not for what your curiosity needs. So, anyways, that's what he says here. Sif Katan Gimel Omer Lo B'Chulei. So, what do you say? Shabbos Himalizuk, etc. Abikor Cholim Kai. This statement, of course, is talking about Bikor Cholim. What about Richie's question? What do we say about Nichum Avelim? V'Nichum Avelim Yomar Lo, quote, Shabbos Hi Mile Nachem. Shabbos is not a time where we're allowed to sort of offer formal comfort. But v'nechama krov alav. But the nechama is coming soon. Okay, is soon to be here. V'yesh mekilim derashai lomar hamakom yenachemcha. Some are solely into about allowed to say hamakom yenachem. Yenachemcha is just you, singular male. Okay. Some are lenient to do this. So if you look at Jeffrey has this one, the addition of extra comments. Why would you allow this to be the case? I thought we're worried that if I say certain things to them, it will lead to certain tefillos. If I say to a person, look what he says here. Sorry, again, it's number 3 for you, Jeffrey. For everyone else, just listen for a moment. Who would allow such a kula? So the Machatzis Shekel writes, the person who died isn't coming back, right? At a very factual level. What am I going to do? If I say to them something and it'll stir up something for them, they're not going to turn around and start davening to Kodesh Baruch Hu, please bring them back. Unlike by a sick person, right? A sick person, if you start saying certain things, really, Kadosh Baruch Hu, please help them. They need to get better, etc. Here, there's obviously the finality of death. It's not like the pain. This is an interesting question. I'm not sure. This is a debatable point, at least in my opinion. He says that the pain of the avel, of the mourners, will not increase more because of nichum avelim. Someone who's menachem avel doesn't increase the pain of an avel. The pain of an avel is already there. I think that's interesting. I think that's a debatable point.
As it comes over.
Right, correct. Right, yeah, right, yeah. But if you come to see somebody on Shabbos and you're like, oof, they're really in a bad state. Like they're really sick. I didn't realize how sick they were. You might start to daven a lot more than you were before. You go, oh, they're really struggling. So that's the difference. That's the difference. So there's no, what am I going to be? Scream out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the person, on the Avel? The Avel, I knew they were already in pain. There's no change in terms of like, I'm going to suddenly, call out, with that sort of suddenness. Okay. Let's go back to finishing the Mishnah Berurah. Cross of a prima godam in Baha Avel lebeis haknesses achar amiras mizmor shili yom haShabbos shuv lo yikra shamish su neged ha'avel. So once you hit Mizmor Shili Yom HaShabbos on a Friday night, so it's Shabbos l'chol davar. I literally just said Mizmor Shili Yom HaShabbos. So we assume that that's a verbal acknowledgement and an acceptance of Shabbos. That's why the line in the Siddur for Nichum Avelim is right before Mizmor Shili Yom HaShabbos. So if an Avel comes late to shul, there's no giving them that comfort of that Hamakom Menachem Eschem Esoch Shabbos, because it's Shabbos already. L'chol davar, and
What does that mean?
Tzu'u is like come, negative avel. So what happens? The shamish brings in the person, never kind of comes towards them. Today we just sort of turn towards the person and we say Hamokim Yenachem Eschem. But it's the shamish would call out. By the way, it's interesting in Young Israel of Woodmere. They have interesting because they have such a huge minyan on a Friday night. So the rabbi will get up, the stender, clap the stender, Nichum Avelim, and because the size of the shul came out every week. There's an avel, just how the statistics are of the size of the shul. The others would mirror 1,500 whatever families. So they literally, someone gives the rabbi gives a clap, Nichum Avelim. Here, it works on a Friday night, like it's it's a 20, 25 people, it's, okay, we acknowledge the person sort of by name and, who they're, and we say, before Mizmor Shir. Correct, because Mizmor Shir is the fully acceptance of Shabbos.
Like what we do, like because of Yom Yontif, that's what we do.
So why don't we do it before the Quran? Because I mean, when you start the Quran to after we're
It's not.
Right. However, what are you doing? We're reenacting actually sort of what they did in the Gemara has this description in times of old, where they would go out to the fields. It's the preparation for Shabbos. I love that you even are saying that it feels like Shabbos. That's how it should feel, but it's the preparation for Shabbos to get you to feel like it's Shabbos. But the true point that Shabbos really starts is Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos. But that is the goal of Kabbalah Shabbos, is that you're accepting it. Shabbos is coming. It's like the bride walking down the aisle, and at the end, it's like, and now we're under the chuppah, right? And that we feel the sense of we're at a wedding. Right? But that joyous sense that happens at the end of the weekdays, the Avel shouldn't participate in that. That is a joy that we are taking to the weekday, and we're starting to make it feel like Shabbos, but it's not quite Shabbos, because that's the duty of Erev Shabbos. Erev Shabbos needs to start to build. It's a ramp up. You're building your way towards Shabbos. That was that's the tradition that I think it's on Kuf Yud Ches and Shabbos at I forget the Tana, who would go out in the fields and when they would prepare, right? And then the minhag became in Tzfat, that they would do this every single week.
Rav?
Yes, Simeon, go ahead.
You just made a very interesting point. So getting married is like being sick?
No, like it's you're saying. First of all, we were talking about Nichum Avelim here, but I'm not. But I'm not going there either.
Yeah.
Why don't we acknowledge the Avel after Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbos for the rest of Shabbos? The Ein Lahaskir Avelus with Farhesia. We don't publicly acknowledge, Avelus, which is interesting, by the way, because what do we do every single Shabbos at the announcements? And we're not the only shul. At the announcements on Shabbos, condolences to on the loss of and then a lot of shuls add the guy. I don't know what Ari does here now. Not sure, but right, no more sort of right. There are many places like they add in like a whole tefillah. Like you should, Hashem should. You should know no more sorrow. Okay, But it's funny. It's like really, it's like ain't lahaskia avelas farhaskia. You're not really supposed to have mentioned avelas farhaskia. When we call makom, this is an important point though. Leilech ba'atz lalomar lo Shabbos himili nachem b'chulei rashai. To go up individually to the person is permissible, right? The person lost somebody, you go up to them and you say,
Just Garrett highlights.
right? Because that's how you would act one on one. It's not farhesia. This is how you would act. You see a person who on a Tuesday who lost somebody, so sorry for your loss, right? It's not how are the Yankees. To not talk about the loss is to be completely insensitive to the person where they are in their mind.
But it's always then is Shabbat you go up and you say that Shabbat is not for the come.
Right, but then what do I say? Nuchama krov alavo. It's like wink, wink, right? The Chama is coming, right? Really, the thing is like, okay, they're not sitting shiva, but you could still go over to them, right? And you can acknowledge it. People sometimes like, can I? And by the way, can I go visit them at their house on Shabbos if they're not sitting shiva? The answer is, if you're that kind of friend who's close enough that you should, then yes, go to their house. Right. If you're, third degree, we're socially, we're acquainted, but like, I would never go over to your house on any other Shabbos. If I'm always going to your house on Shabbos, to not go this Shabbos because it was at Avel, that would be actually probably wrong. The thing I wanted to read here from the Aruch HaShulchan, he quotes the Gemara that b'Shabbos today Shammai Osir Lenachem Avelim uLevaker Chol b'Shabbos Mishum Mitztayer V'Gam L'Shol Yavo Lizor b'Shabbos. By the way, Beis Shammai, nothing, no Nichem Ave, nothing, right? Cold. Beis Hillel Matir Mishum D'Zeu B'Chlal Gemilus Chesed. Why does they tell us at the end of the day say you can do these Bikur Cholim? Gemilus Chasadim. You're like chesed for somebody that you could go be mevakir chola. They feel better, right? By the way, that's the Gemara. They take away a 60th of their, pain or whatever by being mevakir chola. You make a difference. Actually, you lighten the pain from the person. People who, oftentimes you go visit someone who's sick or in the hospital. I'm telling you, suddenly, there's. It depends obviously a little bit on the person and the circumstances. There's sometimes a lightening of the person's mood. So ubekoshi hitiru lenachem avelim levaker cholim b'Shabbos mite'amim shenizbaru ela shehitiru chachamim kemo shekasavnu ha'amnam osam b'yeshu yemos lachol ein holchem rak b'Shabbos lo yafer hol yosim. But if you're never going during the weekdays, again, if you never have time, okay, I get it. But if you had time on the weekdays and you didn't go on the weekdays, come on, now you're just. You chose to, because on the weekdays I can watch the Knicks. So like priorities, folks. Lo yafe osim, right? Im lo shemit miturad b'yemos lachol sheyefshar lo lelech. He says he acknowledges unless you were busy during the week, then you can't do it.
On the other hand, if somebody buries a close relative on the first day of Kol HaMoed, nobody's supposed to say anything to them until.
No, I think you can, but it's not supposed to be,
You don't want to leave this person.
No. You could. By the way, the person starts saying Kaddish already at that point after the the burial, even though they didn't start Shiva. No, you can of course go over to them, and again, it's not a formal Nichum Avelim, but to be a mensch and to go over to them and to acknowledge that's it's not it's important. Yeah.
But Rav, is that nichum during Chal HaMoed? That's a very good question because would it be on the same level as Chol, or would it be on the same level as a Yom Kodesh? Like
There's no Avelus, there's no Shiva on that's what the term
that's correct.
There's
That's
no
correct.
so there's no formal nichum avelim. You could ask for tzrachav, so you could probably be more explicit because we say the regular Shmona Esrei on on Chol HaMoed.
Well, it's both. That's why we call it Chol and Moed.
Moed. Yeah. It's a little bit of a gray zone. So the one more thing I wanted to share here. So the Aruch HaShulchan says that Tana Rabba, this is just listen if you. I'm sorry you don't have it in front of you, everyone. Tana Rabba Hanichlas Lavakar Estachol Omer Shabbos Imalizuk before Kol Volavo is Chus HaShabbos. Okay, so he says this is what you say in terms of Shabbos V'Yarchiv Datam B'Tanchum, and you can deepen in terms of the Tanchumim, what's Tanchum in English? Supplications. That's a good word. Now, what are we talking about, though? I can supplicate. I thought that's why we don't do the weekday Shmona Esrei. Umayri, b'chole she'ein bo sakanas hayom, dilu yosh bo sakanas hayom, motor lizok u'lehischanen b'Shabbos. So what are we talking about on Shabbos? Where I have to be a little more careful, where I have to be more concerned with my words, particularly in the formal liturgical way. That's when it's not a person who's in sakana. But if they are in sakana, then I can scream and I can, lischanein is to supplicate b'Shabbos without any stopping. There's nothing to stop me. And then there's a whole question about what's the language of how I'm supposed to when I go visit a chole on Shabbos. There's 4 or 5 deos in the Gemara, and we follow the opinion of Shivna Ish Yerushalayim, who b'knisasa when he would go visit a chole on Shabbos, Omer, what would he say when he came in? B'knisasa lechole Omer Shalom. He would say hi. That's all he would do, and they would talk, I'm sure. And when he would leave, he would say, Omer, Shabbos Malizuk, or Refuah Krovolavo, Racham Amrub B'Shifta B'Shalom. Then he would leave. So he would say, I'm not saying a formal tefillah. Basically, his last saying, I'm not saying a formal tefillah, but I love you. You're in my heart. I know you're not feeling well. Okay?
No, it's not okay, because that is a public demonstration of avelus.
No. This is a person who's a chole. A
chole.
Oh,
okay.
You're coming to visit the chole, and at the end you're saying, I can't daven, I can't cry out to God, but the refuah is coming soon, right? Wink, wink, nod, nod. The refuah is coming soon, and maybe it's not even wink, wink, nod. It's like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is gonna, it's a way of not asking for Hashem to do anything, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is gonna take care of you, giving them chizuk, right? And then he says this. V'chein k'she'osed mishaberach l'chol beis ha'knesses lo yomar kama b'chol hamakom yishlach refuah ela Shabbos himalizuk. You should change the girsa. But he says aval eslenu. He says I'm a community rabbi. The Aruch HaShulchan. Mevarchem v'yishlach lo meheru v'yishlach lo refuah shleima b'chulei b'chulei. Shabbos himalizuk b'chulei. V'chein nitpas l'sidurim. We ordered the new Sidur from Art Scroll here in the in Eastern Europe, and look, lo and behold, this nusach is in here. V'lo yadati mi hitir lahem zeh. Who told the guy who wrote the Sidur to put it in? Im lo b'cholam esukan godo yesh bo sakanas hayom. How could you say yishlach lo mehir refuah? You can't ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu directly. The guy broke his thumb. V'yishlach lo meher refuah shleima min hashamayim. That he broke his thumb. I'm not making fun of it. Go over to the person who broke their thumb and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. it's got to hurt and, feel better. But to ask the Kodesh Baruch Hu, Yishlach lo meher refuah. If the person is, just had, emergency surgery on Shabbos, and they need to, they went to the hospital, by the way, because they was daven. There, is we daven for the hostages, we daven for the, for people who are in sakana right now. They had surgery on Arab Shabbos, and they're daven for them. Suffix sakana also. But again, the person who, once I was like 11th grade, I broke both my arms at the same time. I had two casts. One that went all on my left arm, all the way up to my shoulder, and on my right arm, it went up to my elbow. And I had run into the wall, and I had braced by running into the concrete wall in the gym, and I tripped, and I stumbled into the concrete wall. And I put my hands out to brace myself. I was running at full speed, and I broke the bone right here, and I remember I was in shul, okay, it was uncomfortable. Believe me, I was uncomfortable, and I remember they're like, oh, we should say Misha Berach for you. I had none of these halachos. Like, sure, add my name, go for it. Like, yeah, I'm in pain, but I'll be okay. Like, I broke. It was interesting. There were interesting heterim on test taking. I had found a gray area in the rules of school.
Because it wasn't Sakanas Nefesh.
Yeah, I wasn't in the life-threatening. I was in a lot of discomfort. Life was very complicated, by the way. It was not so easy. Taking a shower wasn't straightforward. I couldn't. Nothing was easy. Like I couldn't do anything. God bless my parents. My parents really took, so I had to do oral. I had to take oral. All my tests were oral. Those 4 weeks I had a cast. Anyways, yeah. So, so I remember my Rebbe was actually about to make Aliyah. So he also, younger days, he was like a gabbai also. And he said, if you mess with the Misha Berach for Cholim, because he's like, it doesn't make sense that we should say the Misha Berach for Cholim on Shabbos. During the weekdays, go for it. Whatever you want. It's daven for people who broke their leg, they broke their finger, that's fine. He wanted to heal nicely, but on Shabbos he felt, how could you daven for that? That's not. That's against the rule of the Gemara. But he said, that's why he said that the third rail comment that people get upset. What do you mean? Like, this person's in pain. You should daven. So he said, don't mess with it. Okay. What about he says here about what about minhag about nichum avelim on Shabbos? The Aruch HaShulchan here points out that the Gemara doesn't mention Eze Lashon Lomar Benichum Avelim. Okay. By the way, who asked the question about where does the Nichum Avelim's origin story? Somebody, maybe it was Shlomo. I don't remember. So Simeon asked that question. So here, the Aruch HaShulchan says it's not found in Shas. There is no formal language, and he says V'nir the Yochol Lomar Kamo B'chol Mahamakom Yenachem Chabesoch B'chulei. Aval yesh omrim sheyesh lomer kamo b'chol b'shas Shabbos milinochem u'mechama karav. And then he says v'atzleinu lo nahagu b'nichum avelim b'Shabbos. Nobody says any of these lines on Shabbos. We just don't do it. So that's why we're like, we don't do it. This is what he's reporting, and I don't remember ever going over to somebody. By just being honest, I don't remember ever going over to somebody and saying such a line. Shabbos people is for Krovalava. We say it all the time. Right, that's the Misha Berach V'cholim, which has the request right before we say we don't request. That's the funny language that's in there. Anywho, that is Reish Pei Zayin. Oh, all right. So let's stop. We'll continue with Reish Pei Ches next time, which is the laws of Tanis on Shabbos. This comes into very important turf about important topic about Kiddush on Shabbos, the Kiddush in Shul, the Kiddush that everyone comes and eats seared crackers and whatever. And the reason that was necessitated, there's a halachic reason behind it, and then we will talk about also we'll talk about the topic of crying on Shabbos, and other things that, and then we'll get into a little bit of an odd topic about a tanis chalom. Okay, that's a topic. We're gonna have to, do some explanation, little pre-work before we explain that one about the tanis chalom. But that's what's coming up here. A lot of topics about pain and sadness on Shabbos. And can you tap into that, or do you have to avoid it? All right. See you next time, everyone. Have a wonderful week.
Rob,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you all.